Hello, today I'm going to be going over exporting the parts that you made in Autodesk Inventor into Cinema 4D for further animations and rendering. I'm just going to show the basics in Cinema 4D like controls and like object parameters and the very basics of where you change your render settings. So to get started, you have your part that you created. I had some other videos that show the basics of making parts like this one. So to export this into uh, Cinema 4D, I'm using Cinema 4D R19. To export it, uh, Cinema 4D accepts OBJ. That's the one I found that works the best. So you go to File, Export, and CAD format, and you have to make sure you select the OBJ file. And one more thing, I skipped over it. There's an options button here, and usually the default sometimes goes to this one, which is a really low quality. So sometimes high quality on bigger files has too many polygons and it slows down in Cinema 4D, but you really have to test it out. So medium and high is probably where you should export. Alright, going back into Cinema 4D, I guess I can show how to import the file. So go to File, Merge, and then find the file that you just exported. So it would be the OBJ file. And notice that it also has an MTL file. If you apply material in here, these materials don't really work in Cinema 4D, but they work as good placeholders. But this one has no material, and I'll open the OBJ, and there's some options here. So there's like scale. For us it doesn't really matter right now because there's no other objects, and we don't have to import any material file. That's just optional. So once you have the object in here, you can scroll in and out to zoom, and the other controls are if you hold 1 on the keyboard, the number 1, hold that and then click and drag. That's how you pan the camera. If you let go of 1 and hold 2 and drag, that's how you zoom. You can also zoom with a scroll wheel. And if you hold 3 and click and drag, that's how you rotate. So the controls are a little hard at first, but eventually you'll get used to it. In Cinema 4D, you'll notice that there's like a tree here. So this is where all of your solids will show up. So if I like Control C and just copy a bunch of these, you see they all show up here as different objects. And the easiest way to just move objects around are using this kind of XYZ axis arrows. So if you go onto the arrow, it'll light up, and you can drag it in the axis like this. There's also these side ones which light up both arrows, which these are combinations of axes. So you can also just click on objects to select them in this tree. So I have 3 objects, and you can either select them here or you can just click on them. And every single object, once you select it, has its own parameters icon over here. And by the way, this is just a layout, so there's like a bunch of different layouts and like animate whatever. But if you ever need to reset, you can just go into standard and this will have your main, this will be the main layout. So let's say I want to change some parameters here. There's like basic things like name and some others, but the most important ones are x coordinates, y coordinates. So I'm clicking on it, holding and dragging. You can also just type in a value, and this is just a different way of moving parts around. Then you have scale. So if I want to make the y scale like 2 times, it just stretches it in the y direction times 2. So that's just a different ways of kind of manipulating objects. And then you have your angles, and these angles go around the little arrows like this. Okay, so one of the things you might want to do is, let's say you want to move this at an angle, but not around this point, but like around a different axis. So one way to do that is, on the left hand side there's a panel here, and one of the options is enable axis. So if you click on that, a little box shows up, and now you can freely move the axis without actually moving the object. So I can move the axis here, click enable axis, and now I'm able to rotate the object on that axis. And then in this tree diagram you can kind of begin to make structures like a hierarchy. So I'll show how to make like a normal shapes. So there's these panels up here which are the main controls. So if you click and hold, it shows up a menu, and I'm gonna just do cube. So that's how you just make a cube like that, and there's like quick arrows here to quickly change the parameters, and of course all of them are in this panel over here too. But the main thing I was going to show is making a null object. So this object, there's nothing real here, it's just like a placeholder. So what you can do is, let's say this object, I can click and drag and move it under the tree for the null object. So now whenever I move the null, I'm also moving the solid underneath. So one way you could set the axis of rotation is, I removed it, putting the null where you want the rotation, like let's say over here somewhere. Then setting the object under the null, and then just rotating the null, not the object. And then of course you can rotate the object on its own axis within the null. So there's a lot of different kind of small tricks like this to make various animations, like a robot arm or like wheels or something. And you can kind of, if you hold control and click, you can select multiple objects, and then you just you can drag them under the null. So now I'm moving the null and all of these move. So by grouping parts like this, you can like group all the parts of like a robot arm together, move the whole thing, and just kind of make a functional hierarchy of parts. Alright, let's talk about one more important thing. When I first got started, I didn't know how to switch between windows. So if you go to like File, New, I'm just gonna make a cube. Um, to go back to the first window, you go into a window and then your project. So you can have multiple ones open, and you can go copy something from one, Control C, go into the other, and just paste it in here. So this can be really useful in like copying over projects or things like that. And finally, I'm going to show you like not actually rendering, but just kind of where you adjust the parameters and select the uh, render type. So if you click to edit render settings, this is your main menu for changing the settings for your renderer. So they have the standard physical pro render, and I think these are the default ones. And then I have the plugin Redshift. I'll be going over it in different videos, but it's a GPU based render plugin, but you can just use the standard one. And the main options that you need to probably change are your the width and height of the window. So I might want it to be 1920 by 1080, and then if I make this small, like 100, you can see the over here 500. The lighter part is the part that's actually being rendered. So 1080 is like the full picture. Then you can you need to change the output. So here you can just select like where, and then where the file goes. And the format I like to use is TIFF because it's like a lossless format, but you can just use like JPEGs or PNG or whatever. I don't recommend using like MP4 because Cinema 4D will automatically make your animations into MP4s, but if anything happens, the whole file will corrupt. So it's best just to render a series of a bunch of different images. I can show some examples. So like this, I have just hundreds of frames, and it's just hundreds of pictures one by one. So I can always just resume the render and put it together in Premiere Pro later. And in Redshift, I'll be going. This is like more complex, but I'll be going over a lot of these settings and how to apply materials and things like that. I'll just show a preview, I guess, of like a quick result. Just make this aluminum. Put some light and yeah, so this is just a quick preview of kind of what I'll be showing, how to get results like these and render and export these into animations. Yeah.